Greetings, and thank you for joining us for our first musical Sip and Sail cocktail hour inspired by the river, a celebration of classical music. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this event from the concert hall of the New West Symphony, an esteemed performing arts organization that attracts diverse audiences to experience live symphonic music in the Los Angeles area. All of us at AmaWaterways are thrilled about our collaboration with the New West Symphony and are inspired to welcome you to tonight's virtual Sip and Sail cocktail hour, during which we will celebrate the classical music and composers associated with our European river cruise itineraries. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you our hosts for the evening. Co-founder and Executive Vice President of AmaWaterways, the ever-sparkling Kristin Karst, and the Grammy Award-winning music director of New West Symphony, Maestro Michael Christie. We wish you a beautiful sailing and a bon voyage.
So, hello, welcome everyone again, and to our travel advisor partners, thank you so much for joining, and thank you to all our guests, our loyal guests, our guests who would like to join us in the future. So happy to spend this hour together with you. Now, AmaWaterways has always had a strong connection with music. When we started our company 2002, that's now more than 18 years ago, we started out as Amadeus Waterways, named after the famous composer Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Now, later we shortened our name to AmaWaterways, but still many of our ship names were derived from musical terms such as Amacello, Amacerto, Amasonata, and Amaviola. Even some of our itinerary names, such as Melodies of the Danube, reflect our passion for music, a beautiful global language that unites us and continues to lift our spirits, even during these times when many of us are apart. Now, with September being Classical Music Month, we thought we would highlight some of the classical music and musicians that were inspired by the rivers. And we could think of no one more fitting to join us on our journey than New West Symphony's director, Michael Christie. For those who may not know, the New West Symphony is an esteemed performing arts organization here in our own local area, Thousand Oaks, Westlake Village, close to Calabasas, where our office is located. And it is made up of some of the world's most accomplished musicians. They are located here, and we have supported them with fundraising events in the past, will do, of course, in the future, and always delighting in the performances of their many Grammy-nominated artists. Michael, what an honor it is for us to have you with us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Christine. It is amazing to be with all of you because not only do we really treasure the collaboration that we have with AMA, but also being in this community is just fascinating. Like the European capitals that you sail through, there's such a distinguished history in Ventura County, and we're thrilled to be able to cross bridges to make these wonderful connections. And you're right, our musicians are not only Grammy nominated, they are performing in thousands of films that are actually created on the sound stages throughout Hollywood and Southern California. So if you hear a John Williams film, then no doubt several of our musicians will be on those iconic recordings.
Thank you, Michael. And I know that many of your members actually also have been on board our ships in the past. I know about Africa, the Mekong River, and I just want to also offer a special welcome to all the members of the New West Symphony here in Conejo Valley. Hello to all of you. So it is, of course, the time to raise the glass. So I would like all of you to raise your glass and join us in a toast, as we always do during our Sip and Sail cocktail hour events. A famous writer once called music the universal language of mankind. And so I propose we toast to embracing the language that unites us from every river to every ocean and beyond, and maybe never forget through all our differences that we are all one people at heart. Cheers.
Cheers.
Now, for all the ones who are new to our Sip and Sail, our Sip and Sail cocktail hour is the hour on board our ships when you come back from all your included shore excursions, different ones that we offer you, to settle down on board again. After you come to the lounge, before you go for dinner, there is a special cocktail menu, there is wine, there is champagne, there's your favorite beer, of course, as well, if you like to. And so all our guests are just sitting down, socialize, talk about all their experiences during the day while you are getting ready for your well-deserved 5-star dinner in our different dining rooms. So this is our special Sip and Sail cocktail hour. And now I think it is time to enjoy a very, very special video.
Indeed, and we're going to play an excerpt of a piano concerto that doesn't need very much introduction, but I want to make sure that everybody's starting to get their head around the music that comes from the region of the world where these cruises happen. So put yourself at the end of the beautiful Danube and listen to this composer. And at the end of the excerpt, we're going to be asking everyone to put in a poll or the comment section, depending on the platform you're on, the composer whom you think wrote this iconic work. Enjoy. All right, everyone, it's time for you to think about which composer. Some of this is going to be obvious because a couple of these composers are in a different region, so that's a good start. But we have just heard the first piano concerto performed by Lang Lang at the last night at the proms. Ready? If you've submitted your answer, the answer is Ferenc Franz Liszt. So we'll find out how many of you guessed the right answer. So a couple things about Liszt, so important for us to know, is that many of the composers that are the spotlight composers of the Danube area were composing at a time when music was changing for so many reasons. The instruments and the orchestra were changing. The piano itself was becoming reinforced with steel. The strings were changing. Composers could do unbelievable things. So Franz Liszt had music in his family, and his family was a terrific connection between the classical era and the romantic era. His father, a musician himself, knew Haydn, Hummel, and even Beethoven personally. But it was when Liszt heard the Italian virtuoso Paganini that he decided that he needed to be able to play his piano as well as Paganini could play his violin. And the audiences swooned for Paganini. Who knows if that's what inspired Liszt, but in any case, he was committed to making this instrument work. And you probably noticed with Lang Lang how his hands kept going like this in parallel. And when you see a pianist playing Franz Liszt, it's one of the advances that Liszt brought. It's called the three-hand effect, which allows several octaves to be played, and it makes the piano sound absolutely orchestral. Now, other composers that were living at the time, just to give you some perspective, in this time of incredible musical advances, we're talking about Chopin, Wagner, Berlioz, Schumann, Saint-Saëns, and Grieg. All of these composers, in their own way, taking the traditions of the classical era with their own genius, and what comes out really was starting to anticipate some of the extraordinary changes that would have typified what would become 20th century traits. For example, exotic harmonies, expanded musical form, and various thematic developments that frankly help them tell stories in a very, very beautiful way. Sadly for Liszt, when he was in his 50s, he lost both of his adult children. He retreated to a solitary life, but after 6 years of real penance, he gradually returned to vigorous touring schedule, and it is said that he crossed via boat, train, and road 4,000 miles in his last years before he passed. The Liszt Academy of Music is one of the most enduring and sensational international schools for music education, but also it's a center for higher education in general, musical training, and beautiful concerts. And recently, they committed to the study of folk music of Central Europe. So when you go to see the beautiful Franz Liszt Music Academy in Budapest, boy, you really will get the full feeling of not only this great history, but also how the country is trying to preserve its traditions as well.
Wonderful. Now we are in Budapest, and one of our most popular itineraries is our 7-night Melodies of the Danube sailing, which begins in Hungary's romantic capital, Budapest. And you will be absolutely blown away by the fairy tale buildings here, from the Hungarian Parliament building to the Fisherman's Bastion and the impressive Jane Bridge. And Budapest is, of course, the city of so many bridges that we are passing while we are cruising the river. And that's, of course, showing here the Parliament illuminated. I think one of the most stunning buildings in the world, and truly a highlight for so many of our guests when we are sailing the Danube River. Now, as we continue to sail along the Danube, we visit many cities associated with many well-known composers. And before we talk about our next stop, Vienna, Austria, I would just like to mention something about Bratislava. Bratislava, the capital of Slovakia. Now, Bratislava, given its interesting geographical location, cultural ties with other cities in the area was always very important. In this city worked important musicians such as Haydn, who was born just a couple of miles away from Bratislava, Beethoven, Mozart, Liszt, and Bartók, all of which had important relations with the musician of the city, along with so many others. Now, the important musical traditions continue to the present. Bratislava plays host to one of Central Europe's most important festivals, Bratislava's International Festival of Music, which takes place every year in October. And among other musical styles, we also find jazz there, Bratislava being again host to an important international festival, but it's also home to various orchestras, such as the Bratislava Symphony Orchestra, the Philharmonic Orchestra, and so many more. Now, of course, let's continue on. And the next stop is Vienna, the capital of Austria, where also our co-founder and president of AmaWaterways, Rudi Schreiner, was born in the city of waltzes. So in Vienna, we offer 2 guided excursions during our time being there. And that's about a day and a half that we will be docked in Vienna, pretty centrally located at Handelsquai. The first is our Imperial Vienna tour, where you will see the majestic opera house and the former imperial palace of the Habsburgs. However, the highlight for many of our guests is St. Stephen's Cathedral, which you will have a chance to admire both from the inside as well as the outside. And if you are a more active guest, then there is really nothing more wonderful than biking through Vienna. So all our ships carry more than 25 bikes on board, and you can do guided bike tours with us, or you can just take the bike on your own and just make sure you are back when we start cruising again. So you will cover more ground while enjoying the fresh air on our guided tour. Or, yeah, of course, as I mentioned, biking and pedaling through the city at your leisure is something very special and something what many of the locals do. We also offer free time for you to check out some of the other wonderful sites in the city, such as the Spanish Riding School or the beautiful library at Schönbrunn Palace. So I know, Michael, you want to talk now about...
Well, I have a one of my first opportunities to travel outside the United States was to visit a friend studying in Vienna when I was an undergrad at Oberlin College. And I went there 2 times, both once in the summer. So I saw Schönbrunn with the beautiful gardens, and once in the winter where I saw the New Year's Eve festivities that happened. Now, when you go to Vienna, whatever time of year it is, you need to make sure you go next door to the opera house, to the Sacher Hotel, and have the Sacher Torte. And then you also need to go to a restaurant nearby the Stephansdom and have a good Wiener Schnitzel. Unbelievable. You have to have it there. But I remember sitting outside in the cold as a student on New Year's Eve, waiting for a ticket, which I got way at the back of the State Opera for a performance on New Year's Eve of Die Fledermaus, which is an operetta where a lot of cameo appearances happen and stars and politicians and actors suddenly appear on stage. It was quite amazing. And the next morning, stood outside in the cold yet again, all rugged up, to run into the Musikverein to get a seat, well, a Stehplatz, or a standing place at the very back, and watch the Vienna Philharmonic's New Year's Day concert. So I have a very fond memory of Vienna, indeed, both in the summer where we can go. We'll talk about Schönbrunn when we talk about Mozart, but also just any time of year. And boy, I'd love to be on those bikes. So the next composer that we want to talk about is Johann Strauss Jr., the Waltz King. And what I love about the story of the Strauss family, so we know Richard Strauss, who is no relation to the waltzing Strausses, Johann Edvard Strauss, But still, Richard Strauss had such a soft spot for the waltz kings that he would often refer to them really very lovingly, even though not a family member. But Johann Strauss Jr. Is the son of another famous composer, and that composer, Johann Strauss father, was absolutely emphatic that his son would not become a musician. So he wanted him to become a banker. So Johann Strauss Jr., unbeknownst to his father, takes violin lessons and becomes an exceptional violinist. The father found out, and it was really, according to all the biographies, a not pretty picture. Actually, the father eventually, for other reasons, abandoned the family, and only at that point the mother supported Johann Strauss Jr.'s activities to become a composer. But with the father out of the house and in a different area of the town, there were rival orchestras, Johann Strauss Sr. and Johann Strauss Jr., if you can believe it, the father and the son competing with each other until the father finally passes away and the junior comes in, absorbs father's orchestra into his own, and from there, Johann Strauss Jr. starts to compose some of the waltzes that have become among the most beloved, including On the Blue Danube. And I love this story because so many classical pieces are, well, we think of them as just ever present. But imagine there was a day when Beethoven's Fifth Symphony was heard for the first time, On the Blue Danube was heard for the first time. Some of these first appearances of these pieces were lauded by critics and the public alike. On the Blue Danube got a pretty good, I guess, fine, very tepid response. And it was a year later when Strauss took the piece to the Paris World Fair in 1867, did the public completely embrace On the Blue Danube, and it has become one of the most deeply loved works. And it is actually the unofficial national anthem of Austria. So I want to take you to a recording which happens in the late morning from Austria every year, the New Year's Day concert. And at the end of the concert, no matter what the conductor chooses for the rest of the program, has to have the Blue Danube Waltz on there. And at the beginning of the Blue Danube Waltz, the orchestra starts to play, and then the audience traditionally claps. The conductor turns around to address the audience, wishing on behalf of himself and hopefully soon herself, the Vienna Philharmonic, a beautiful new year. And then he or she then turns around, continues the performance. What is wonderful throughout that concert is that the ballet dancers of the Vienna State Opera are featured as well in iconic imagery from around Vienna. So for this recording, which is the end of the Blue Danube Waltz, you'll see a little bit of the Vienna State Ballet Company, and then hopefully you'll see a little bit of the Vienna Philharmonic in the Großer Saal of the Musikverein.
Oh, so amazing to know so much more about the history of every musical piece.
Well, it's not just that it's all roses. You know, every human being has their life experience, and these composers, there was no internet. Medicine was a completely different world. These people would expire from things that we could just take a quick antibiotic from. So it's the world they lived in was quite something, and yet they synthesized all these other influences and created these amazing works that endure to today.
Wow. So let's take a peek. I think the last time when I was dancing the waltz, the Blue Danube Waltz, was last year when we questioned the Arma Magna. And that was, of course, on the Danube. What a stunning, stunning piece, really. But, you know, many other celebrated musicians made Vienna their home as well. Ludwig van Beethoven, Johannes Brahms, Anton Bruckner, Franz Schubert, Antonio Vivaldi, Franz Liszt as well, Gustav Mahler, and of course, Mozart. So, Michael, I know you would love to tell us so much more about Mozart and Vienna and everything around. So let's open the next page in our storybook and continue with Mozart.
Yeah, well, I think that what's amazing about Vienna being the hub of the Austrian Empire for such a long time is composers were in many cases desperate for the patronage of not only the royalty but also the religious hierarchy as well, patronizing composers, performers, and it was really quite a bit of a tussle for who would get the pride positions of running the cathedral music programs, running the education programs. So Mozart has this amazing history because born in Salzburg, further down on your cruise, and spending his final 10 years of his short life in Vienna, he is one of the most traveled musicians that we know of because his father, Leopold, was we might call shameless promoter of his children's incredible talent. Now, I think if you had heard them, you wouldn't have thought, oh, that's shameless, because we would want to hear that amazing genius. But boy, they traveled Europe in north direction, southerly direction for years on end, which was just remarkable, as early as Mozart being 6. Now, this picture that you can see here of the Schönbrunn Palace, Mozart actually made his first appearance at the age of 6 for Maria Theresa and her children there in Schönbrunn, but then he would go away from Vienna for quite a long time, living and under the patronage of various very wealthy people in Salzburg, but then as his notoriety and certainly as his compositional popularity and heft increased, he was in Prague, he was in Munich, he was all over the place performing and composing as well. And I think what's great about these 10 years that he spent in Vienna is that it's such an interesting parallel to so many other times when music is part of a thriving moment and when artists have to struggle through intense moments like we have now. Similarly, when Mozart arrived in Vienna, last 10 years of his life, height of his popularity, had written many of his greatest operas with still some to come, some of his greatest symphonies, concertos, etc. So when he arrived, he won the financial support of Emperor Joseph II and was soon established as the finest keyboard player in Vienna. But that thriving career really hit the brakes about 5 years into his time there when the Austro-Turkish War in 1786 happened. The support for music and the arts declined, as you would imagine, substantially. He really took this with incredible heart. His output slowed, his loans grew, his emotional state soured. So he really had quite an interesting and mixed time because he had such euphoric successes and such inward calamities that happened. He conducted the premiere of Magic Flute on September 30th of 1791, the year he died, just months before he died on the 5th of December, famously leaving behind his incomplete Requiem. So we would like to go on to our next performance. Oh, you can see the beautiful gardens there. Oh, if you can just imagine.
Salzburg, right? Yeah, I know. Mozart moved to Vienna when he was 25, but he was born in Salzburg in 1756. So he was actually quite young when he passed away. And Salzburg is not directly located on the Danube. There is a small river. It's called the Salzach. However, it is not far away from the Danube. And when we are docked in Linz, we offer you, our guests, our wonderful travel partners, an included excursion, actually two types of excursion to Salzburg. One is a full day tour and one is a half day tour if you want to explore Linz, which is also connected to Anthony Bruckner, a little bit more in the morning, and then of course go later to Salzburg. But definitely when you're in Salzburg as part of the tour, we will take you to Mozart's Geburtshaus in, that's actually the street where he was born, right in the city center. So you can explore everything on your own there. And now let's take a look at the video.
Yeah, so this is a performance by one of our New West Symphony violinists named Christian Fatu. And he actually, if everybody just remembers this guy's name, his last name is spelled F-A-T-U. He has embraced the internet in a wonderful way through Facebook. Not only is his daughter actually an amazingly prominent performing artist, she has over 7 million views on some of her YouTube videos, but he and his wife are a dynamic performing partners. I did want to say about the violin concerto, that the fifth violin concerto that we'll hear a little bit about. Mozart, as I mentioned before, like many composers, were writing at the behest of their patrons and usually had very specific reasons for writing their works. But Mozart's 5 violin concertos and his 3 most famous symphonies, we don't know who he wrote them for. So his 39th, 40, and 41st symphonies, he just needed to write them. And so Mozart himself was a great violinist. He was pushed as a performing violinist by his father, and perhaps it was because of all of that pushing that Mozart pushed back, even though he was extremely accomplished to focus on composing and being a pianist. But you can just grab all of the beautiful singing melodies that happen in all of his violin music to know that the violin was something extraordinarily special. So this is a little example of Christian playing the beginning of the Mozart's 5th violin concerto. Just
Well,
tremendous.
it is amazing. But I still have to say, while it is wonderful to watch these videos on YouTube and everything what we are doing here in a very virtual world, nothing can really replace the personal experience. And I'm just the same way how I look forward to travel again in the future, the same way I cannot wait to go back to a concert hall and to just sit down and have this festive atmosphere around and just, you know, listen and watch to a real concert again. So Michael, let's talk about the challenges. And I always say out of challenges come new opportunities, and the new opportunities for the New West Symphony and the music world in general. How do you see everything?
Wow, yeah, it's I think it certainly for the generations living now, I don't think anybody's seen anything like this, where it's just month after month after month of zero activity when it comes to live performance. And I'll tell you from the New West Symphony's perspective, our venues, like venues around the world, were all closed very quickly in March. And it's interesting because now people have had the summer to figure out what their approach might be to being in front of their patrons. Well, a number of orchestras have decided to defer their seasons at least into the spring, and some of them even a full year from now. We've committed to be fully online for the moment, with a lot of flexibility in the programs that we are creating, so that when the health regulations allow us to bring patrons back in to experience the musicians in person, that we have the flexibility to do so. Also, an interesting thing that happened for the New West Symphony is they brought me on as the new music director the year that this happened. So we had given 4 performances before all the shelter in place happened. So we had just started to lay that foundation of trust between what we were doing, which there were some parts that were quite different from what the audience had experienced before. I've put a lot of focus on the intermission as an opportunity for us to expand our experience for the audience, which I'm really very proud of. But also we were bringing in lots of different cultural elements into our programming as well. So what we've done now is we've committed to be fully online. We are very soon going to be announcing how we are going to play our season, so to speak, which will be online initially. But we've already done original content during the shelter in place. We gave free Mother's Day, Father's Day, Memorial Day concerts, which you can still see on the newwestsymphony.org website. We hosted what we called the Battle of the Sections, where we tasked composers to take music from all over the repertory and bring them together into unique arrangements for the sections of the orchestra, and people donated toward that, which was absolutely fantastic. We've given dozens of donor thank you events, which we actually took the instruments apart, so to speak, from the top of the instrument to the bottom, really giving people a chance to know what the mechanics of the instrument is, what it takes to be able to play them, and lots of musical examples. So we're working really hard because we want to, most importantly, emerge from COVID with a larger audience than we started with. And that's a huge task, but it's really what has to happen. So I view that as a very broad mandate, and the season that we're going to announce to our ticket buyers and to all of you is going to be in a space, we'll call it, that orchestras don't typically inhabit. So from a programming standpoint, much more thematic, much more connected to our Ventura County home and the population. And we're figuring out the delivery mechanisms right now, which are really interesting because now there are no geographical borders. So we can contact people in a lot of different ways. Now, having said that, I'll just say really quickly, there was a USA Today article just the day or two ago talking about what musicians, both performing artists, visual artists of all kinds, are up against. And what we really may see at the end of this is a huge loss of people going from these professions that they trained to doing things where they can make money because they have to pay the rent. And so we're committed to paying our musicians, getting them performing again, even if it's online. But I do want to caution everybody that we are at a time when we may not recognize fully the world that we come back to if we're not supporting those artists. And I think the big question that everybody's asking about being online is, will people pay for that? Because now we've had months of free content and that well is getting dry. So I would just say to everybody, support your local ceramic artists, your local farmers, your local musicians, your local orchestra, your local anybody that's in the creative industry, because my goodness, it is really, really tough out there.
Yeah, no, how true. Now, I want to talk a little bit about our onboard entertainment, because once we get started, we certainly face challenges as well. How can we continue? Can we have singers on board? We always had opera singers, for instance, on board, right? How is this, going to be perceived? And now, and all the ones who have joined us today and have been on board with us, I would think you all have experienced La Strada. So La Strada was actually our very, very first group that came on board. So naturally, we offer a variety of onboard entertainment featuring local performers. And it was on our very first tulip time cruise, in fact, and this was in April 2003. When a guest on board was watching the original trio La Strada in front of the cathedral in Antwerp. And he was blown away what type of virtuosos would be street musicians. And he came back to the ship. He said, you need to invite this group to come on board to give them really a chance to perform in front of your guests. So we did. And from the moment they came, standing ovations. So it actually now, they were so popular that they have grown into a number of string trios, living in different parts of Europe, between still, of course, Belgium, Holland, Antwerp, Ghent, this area, but also now along the Danube River, in France, and many, many other places. So it's a trio with one guitar, two violins, and every guest who is coming on board is just delighted by the classical music they play from local composers. So La Strada, again, a story how, from really being street musicians, they became extremely popular. And now let's see how this story is continuing. I hope that everything will be fine in the future, that we are just going really through this hole and things are coming back. But Michael, I agree with you, the world might look a little bit different later on, and we are here. We need to support everything and everyone now and into the future. So our Melodies of the Danube cruise takes us from Hungary to Slovakia, to Austria, and finally to Germany. And there are many great German composers who are worth mentioning. But today, we would like to share with you a beautiful piece by Joe Newman. And Michael, please tell us a little bit about Newman.
Yeah, this is a composer that people don't really know very much about. He was living about roughly a century later than the composers we've already been covering, but a similar kind of upbringing. A young musician doing lots of tours. It's really, really fascinating when you think back many, many centuries, how musicians were troubadours. They were traveling around in gypsy troops, then they became more settled in the communities, but still they toured because they had to get their music out, and the same is true with Newman. So this work and many of his works are inspired by folk music, and so this German composer is looking at the music of Romania, and once again we are welcoming Christian and Victoria Fatu playing a work of Neumann called Romanisch, or the Romanian. You certainly get a feeling for all the heart and soul that goes into that music. It's just extraordinary.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. And the Romanian, of course, Romania now not part of the Upper Danube that we are talking about here, but there is certainly the other stretch of the Danube from Budapest going down towards the south, towards the Black Sea, where we are cruising through first Croatia, Serbia, coming to Romania, finishing in Bulgaria, which is an equally beautiful and most interesting part of Europe. So if you have done the Upper Danube already, maybe take a look at our Gems of Southeast Europe with the Lower Danube. But that is just a little side note here. So on most of our Danube River itineraries, guests can add a pre or post river cruise line program in Prague, the capital of the Czech Republic. And it's also called the beautiful city of 100 spires. Our loyal guests absolutely rave about this experience, during which, of course, you will be accompanied by one of our wonderful cruise managers who is there with you from the beginning of the program to the end, not just on the cruise, yeah? And so we would like to leave you with a piece today written by the Czech composer Bedřich Smetana, and it is called The Moldau. And I by myself, I grew up in the former part of Eastern Germany in the city of Dresden. And Dresden is only about 2 hours away from Prague. So when I was a child, my parents and my mom was actually a music teacher. She played the piano, I played the piano in my, I would say, 7 years in my life, until I pursued different interests, right? Like that's what we do when we become later teenager. And And I have to say, I have visited probably Prague more than any other city in this world. And every time I have gone to Prague, it is just absolutely stunning, no matter what time of the year you go. And the Moldau, the flow of the river, it's one of my personal favorite pieces in this world. So Michael, let's talk about this.
Yeah, it's so fitting that to think about this work because like the journey that you're taking us on with your beautiful cruise itinerary, the depiction of the Moldau starting as two small springs in the Bohemian forest, becoming ever larger as it goes through the Czech countryside and eventually into Prague is so beautifully captured by Smetana. I mean, it's really amazing. And another composer actually who started his public appearances very young, age 6, just like Mozart. And by his 20s, boy, he was just in full spirit. And also something with all of the empires that were happening in this part of Europe, composers were trying so hard to harness that sense of nationalism, that sense of capturing the musical spirit from the countryside, making sure that somehow they didn't become homogenized. And so it's really, you really get a sense with a composer like Smetana that he is truly the father of Czech music. So enjoy these couple of moments from actually one of the great conductors who just passed away, Jiří Bělohlavek. I chose that video in particular because it's an orchestra of pre-professionals that sounds so beautiful, but it's just so interesting how the traditions keep passing along from generation to generation, whatever the music is.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. And it's just, for me, it's the flow of the river that is really truly portrayed in the flow of this music. So now let's do another poll here. Because even so, as AmaWaterways, we in our general program, we haven't really done a theme, classical music theme in the past. We're always talking about. And we would like to know from you, would you be interested in a classical music river cruise with AmaWaterways? Or is it not a reason for you to come and join because you would anyway, love to be in the cities, Budapest, Vienna, for what the cities are, without any music interest? So now I'm really curious to see. Wow, whoa.
Okay.
97% would like to come and join a classical music cruise. This is absolutely stunning. That means we have to put one together, right?
It sounds like it.
Michael, maybe I can propose to you. Would you like to be our host?
Oh, I would love it. There's so much great music in this whole area. It's just you would have to do a cruise of, I don't know, maybe 2 years to really cover it all. But yes, we could certainly do one in a few days, I think.
I think so. I think so. And this is maybe also the time right now where we are, that we have a little bit more time to start to become creative, to prepare, to really see how we could do it and to do it right. And so now, of course, the time is running, and it's always running when we have a good time, right?
It is.
So with this, I would like to propose our farewell toast to you. And now I have actually borrowed a little bit here, a couple of words from Oscar Wilde. So may you set your days to music, and may you always follow the rhythm of your heart, wherever it may lead you. Hopefully on a future AmaWaterways river cruise. So cheers to this, and thank you
Cheers.
so much, Michael.
Oscar said it very well on an AmaWaterways tour.
Well, we definitely look so much forward to welcoming you on board the New West Symphony. Of course, you, our esteemed travel advisors, all your clients, and even so it's 5 o'clock, we have so many questions that came in, and I would just like to take a few of the questions. If you still have some time, please stay with us. If not, of course, we understand, but let's dive in right away and go to the very first question. And the first question I answered already: does AmaWaterways offer music-themed cruises? So not as a theme, even so everything what we do when we go on the Danube, there's always this little piece of music, part of it, part of our evening entertainment. When we are in Vienna, we offer you actually the option to go to a classical music concert, Mozart and Strauss. And this can be in different venues, from the Kursalon to the Hofburg Theater, depending on the season when we go, because these venues are also not open every evening. But it's definitely a highlight for many of our guests on board. Now, the next question is, can we go to a concert or visit music venues even if they are not part of the cruise? And of course, this is possible. And our cruise manager on board, who is like your personal concierge, I can say, they are able to arrange tickets for you if the tickets are still available. Of course, you can check on this online as well before you come on board during the cruise, but we as AmaWaterways definitely will help you also obtaining these tickets. Whatever you wish to do, we know the city and we'll be happy to do so. Question number 3, when in Vienna, can AmaWaterways arrange waltz lessons? And that's actually something we even have done. We had some waltz lessons on some of our cruises already. We even had some departures where we had guests on board, and some of the guests were actually dancers even, and they would give lessons to the other fellow passengers and guests as well. So there's a lot that comes together with the right dynamic of our guests on board. We have many of our guests asking if they can also perform one evening or entertain some very trained professionals, and our guests always love it to listen to us as a guest on board. Obviously, we have a resident pianist on board, but you know, we even had groups our fellow travel agents here, charters, full charters that you can do, because wherever you live, you certainly have certain music organizations close by. And we have even arranged to bring baby grand pianos on board for the duration of the 7 or the 14-night cruise. So there is so many things that are possible. Just reach out to us if you're interested in, and let's talk about this.
Wow,
So,
an open mic night.
yeah. I cannot wait to brainstorm with you afterwards, Michael, really, what we can do here together, right? Yes. And there's actually the question, will Michael do a music-themed cruise in the future? So now again, I'm proposing to you, right?
All right, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. Then can we attend a Mozart and Strauss concert? I just mentioned this. Of course, it's part of our program. We offer you the opportunity to do so. Will you ever stop in Vienna for more than 2 nights? That's a very interesting question. So here are the options. Currently, we are there 1 night, really, for the full night, 1.5 days. With a full charter, of course, one can change the nautical schedule, and we can have 2 nights in Vienna, 2 full nights. And something else has to go then, because we have to make sure that port of embarkation and port of disembarkation will remain as listed in the program for the new departure. But whatever is between can be arranged, but then it has to be a full charter. And at the same time, because Vienna is so popular, we also can arrange for you a pre or post stay in Vienna. Yeah, so you can go easily from Budapest to Vienna. It's a 3-hour train ride. Of course, also a personal private transfer can be arranged. So everything is possible. Yeah. And another question is, can you make the song list from the webinar available? And yes, we will post it in our social media channels. So our office will be happy, of course, to do this all. And another question is, when will we know if AmaWaterways is sailing the Christmas market cruises? Because they are just so beautiful. And there are some of you who said, we cannot wait to go. And I by myself can also say, I cannot wait to go. Now, here's the situation. We heard today that Germany has actually announced that starting from October 1st, it will lift as the country travel bans for many more countries than they have currently done. We do not know at this point if the travel ban for the US will be lifted at the same time or maybe a little bit later. This is still unknown. We also don't know because there are so many, like we have here Ventura County or Mendocino County in California, right? Santa Barbara, the Central Coast, so many different areas. So for Germany, it's the same. There are many different parts of Germany and they might have their own restrictions, no matter if it's Bavaria or Bayern in German language, or many of the other places where we are cruising through. However, it gives us some hope. And as you know, at the moment, we have suspended our cruises until October 31st, but not yet into November and not yet into December. So because we still have some hope to get a couple of weeks of cruising out of this year. And if it's possible, then we would love to do those Christmas time cruises. So please stay tuned into the future until we can make the right decision. Obviously, always having the health and safety of our guests in mind. But one ship is cruising, the Ama Christina. We are cruising currently for our German-speaking guests from Germany, from Switzerland, from Austria, also from Holland and Belgium. These cruises are going extremely successful. We have put our health and safety protocol into perfection, I can say. We are the very first US-based river cruise line that has started again. So we are in the perfect position if the countries allow our guests from North America to come in again. All right, so I think that is it. My team has texting me that's the end, no more question, but it's not the end for us. The story continues, the rivers and the music continues to flow. And we look forward, so much forward, to welcoming you all on board, and so much forward to seeing you, Michael, and the new Symphony performing live again. And in the meantime, we will make sure that there is the support continuing. But again, hopefully next year, or maybe in 2022, we can welcome you and many of the fellow musicians on board our ships, and then we will inform you, our travel partners and clients, about this special moment. And I hope we are selling out in a heartbeat. So thank you so much again. And Michael, do you want to say some final words from your side?
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for supporting institutions in the community that you are based in. Anybody wants to find out more about what we're doing, because there are no geographical borders, newwestsymphony.org to see our previous programs and what's coming up. But boy, all best wishes to AmaWaterways.
Thank you so much.
Good cruises.
And so to you. Cheers. Zum Wohl.
Zum Wohl.